Folks, good afternoon. I'm Dustin Siggins with Proven Media Solutions. Today we have a fantastic episode of Cracking the Comms Code, where we're going to tackle how PR teams, communications teams more broadly, but especially PR teams, can make the case to clients throughout an engagement. Because with PR being so amorphous, it's sometimes hard to get out of jargon and be frustrated if a client doesn't understand what we're saying. And so we're going to get the perspective of a former chief communications officer, an agency lifer, and a consultant who have all made the case to clients as to why what's being done on this side of the table benefits them, benefits their bottom line, is worth, frankly, continuing the engagement months and years at a time. Please bring any questions you have to the comments. Looking forward to a lively conversation. And Ted, Amanda, Trish, if you can introduce yourselves, please.
Amanda, you want to start? Or?
Yeah, I'll hop in. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Coyle, a vice president at Resilere Partners. For roughly the last decade and a half, I have been an agency lifer. I've been at agencies that are 2 people. I've been on teams of 300, and I've gotten to touch a lot of really fun industries, everything from cybersecurity, law, and private equity to ed tech, consumer goods, and once commercial trucking. And a big part of why I've stayed in the agency life for so long is that I really do love client service. Trish, Ted?
Yeah, don't be shy.
Go, Ted.
Oh, okay. I'm Ted Merz. I'm the founder of Principals Media. I had a long career of 3 decades at Bloomberg, first as a reporter and editor, and then as a product manager. And 4 years ago, I left, started Principals to do communications, principally ghostwriting of thought leadership and social media for executives and CEOs.
And I'm Trish Nicolas. I'm an enterprise communications and brand executive, and I specialize in leading through growth, transformation, and crisis. And I've been an executive leader with a number of top agencies, as well as on the client side in-house, leading functions and teams for healthcare and technology companies.
And so what we're tackling today is how to translate what we do on the agency and consultant side to what clients want and need to hear from us. And this was always a pain point of mine because our tagline is, we put you in the press. And in my political background as a journalist and as a commentator, people were like, of course, great, let's go. When I decided to enter the B2B space, the first thing people would ask me is, why? Okay, we're getting you in the press. Right, but why do I want to be in the press? Because it gets you attention. Great, what's that going to mean for me? How are we not communicating? It took me 3 years to even begin to communicate to prospects what we were actually talking about, because I just didn't understand. And in the last 2 years, we've shifted our business model. Now we service the communications industry. And if you say to someone like Amanda, hey, we help you put your clients in the press, she says, great, I know exactly what that means. We've cut through the first 3 or 4 steps of that conversation. And ironically, working with the communications teams has actually helped me as an agency owner better communicate the business value, because I think it's because it is kind of giving me an outside perspective. When an agency comes to us and says, we need this thing, we can say, well, maybe that would work better, because we're not as attached to making the sale. The sale's already been made. We're just providing back-end support. And as I've been very active on LinkedIn the last 2 years, it does seem like a lot of PR people, especially the under 35, who maybe have never been in a manager or a VP role, keep speaking jargon in their reports. They keep thinking that a 7-page report's going to win rather than a 1-pager that gets to the point. And so I'd like, Ted, you to lead off first, because I saw a post that you put up that actually led me to want to have this conversation here about how you were interviewed by the information, about how you're helping executives who want to meet the moment do so in the right way, which is a very clear value add. It's a very clear, you're going to see something that's of value. So can you just kind of tee us off here about how you dialed into that, coming from a media background, and now you're doing something in some ways totally different?
Well, I think I just take a big step back, and I think I saw a big secular trend, which was that it's hard to get into the media. You know, there are more PR people than ever. There's like 7 PR people per reporter.
Yep.
The media outlets are getting smaller, and many of them are behind paywalls.
Right.
So I think one big thing to remember is that it's always great to get in the media, and it's always great for your visibility to be at particularly the most famous New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, and so forth. But it's really hard, and you can't guarantee it. And even if you get in this, if you get in once this year, you might not be in for a couple of years. So what we've been seeing is a big trend of what's called going direct, where companies and particularly CEOs are writing their own story and using social media as a distribution platform to publish it and get attention. And I'd say one of the interesting things about it is that you reach your stakeholders directly, but oftentimes the media then covers it. So somewhat paradoxically, you get earned media oftentimes if you're telling a good story on social media. So a lot of companies have been figuring this out, and I noticed this trend, and I said I can help people, perhaps having been a former reporter myself, try to listen to their their strategies, their goals, what they're trying to get done, and frame it more in the form of kind of a journalistic story that would get potentially picked up by the media, but more importantly, be interesting to be read, commented on, liked, and so forth by other stakeholders, whether they be employees, investors, customers, and so forth. So that's sort of where I've been focused in that area. And I would say just about it's very hard to have metrics.
Sure.
One thing I will say is that I think relative to a traditional PR, and this is PR, let's be clear, but a traditional PR says, I'm going to get you in the Wall Street Journal, and you really can't guarantee that. It's very hard, So you end up doing a lot of metrics on how hard you're trying. What I can tell my customers, we're going to publish something every week. So that part of it, we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to help you draft something, and you are going to publish. And so there always is something concrete that is deliverable in a content sense, where oftentimes the traditional PR route, where you're trying to get the media company to publish, you can't guarantee it.
Yep. I think that's a really interesting point too. The one part of the process we really have no meaningful control over is that outcome. And I think, a client will understand that if they trust you and if they find you accountable and if, they see and like the work that you're doing. But without that trust, it's very hard to set that expectation with them early that, no, I can't just call the Wall Street Journal and say company does business well.
Right.
Wait, do you think people expect that? Amanda, do you get clients?
I have met some. That? Fortunately, none of mine right now, but
okay. we are dealing with a client. They have a great issue, frankly, from a media perspective. And they said, can you aim at the Wall Street Journal? And I was like, because we've gotten them USA Today, we've gotten them some other media. I think we got The Hill. Yeah, we got The Hill last year. And then, can you go to the Wall Street Journal? I was like, we can. James Toronto, the senior editor there, has been very polite every single time he's turned us down for the last 8 years on every single client. So we can always send it there. We did. We got turned down. But this is from an agency. This is an agency that knows better, but they want to be able to tell their client, we hit the metric of trying. Right. A metric. And Trish, I'd love you to jump in because you've been on both sides. You've been the buyer and you've been the seller, so to speak.
Yeah. I've been on the agency side where that was the expectation. I remember, clients coming to us and saying, hey, we want to be on the cover of Fortune. We want to be in the Wall Street Journal. And they didn't really have, the story that was going to land there. Or in some cases they did, and we were able to do that. But, from an in-house perspective, I think my view of PR is much broader than media. And it has to be these days, right? Because you've heard me talk a lot about, or maybe seen me post about, I think saying a press release is so antiquated because often, like Ted was saying, we're speaking directly to our publics, directly to our audiences, right? Whether it's on social media or blogs or podcasts or whatever, we're reaching them directly, and we need to be aware that So I call press releases news releases for that reason, because I think a lot of the storytelling is coming directly from companies. Now, alongside that, we have this AI impact, right? Which is a lot of discovery. And being included in the LLMs that are being used to drive AI discovery is from third-party validation, like media coverage, like analyst coverage, like like what partners are saying, other people are saying about our brand and our business. And so we have to be really aware of that. But Ted, one other thing I wanted to riff on real quick that you said I think is really important too, is that we know there's data, and I don't have it open in front of me. There's data that shows that executives posting on LinkedIn authentically and as transparently as they can, people are following the people, not the brands, right? They're engaging a lot more with the executive voices, with the executives who are showing up on LinkedIn and other social media platforms more than they're following the brand. So that strategy, I think, is right on point. Very timely.
I think you use a really good word there too, which is the executive voices. And that's something I've seen with AI where, you want to hear the voice of that executive. And I think that has so much more power. Like, I would rather see an executive misspell something in one of their LinkedIn posts, so I know they actually wrote it and it feels authentic, versus I feel like some AI output, not all, obviously, has become kind of the new lorem ipsum filler font. Like it's easy to just glide over.
Right. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right.
I think too, when I was talking earlier about how PR must be much broader than just media relations. I know there's some specialized, agencies that do just media relations, and that's great and that's fine and it's important. But I think about I talk often too about understand what the business outcome is, what the destination is, and that's where how you define your strategy and the tactics of how you're going to get there. And this is what I expect of my agency partners as well as of my teams. And you have to be really clear on what are the outcomes you want to achieve, and you build the plan toward that. And a piece of that may be, we're going to target new media outlets, or we're going to do some, placed, some bylines, working with Proven Media Solutions or with whoever. We're going to, do some of that work, but we're also going to think about doing a live stream event. That's public relations as well. And, I did that with Wellstar because trust during COVID, trust in the media had plummeted. And it was very clear that we could not rely on media coverage to drive the behaviors that we wanted to influence. And so we live streamed our fourth wave of COVID event directly to the public. We also, recognized that there was for back to school in 2020 that all of the messaging was so complicated. It was changing so rapidly. The kids were about to go back to school that summer, and I was very worried about, people talking about kids as vectors. And so we created a rap. I wrote a rap that we used as a commercial for like 18 months during COVID. That's public relations too. And we need to be thinking about, storytelling and the outcomes that we want to achieve and how do we get there.
I think it's hard though. I just say and I'm new to the game, so I'll say that, but it seems like the comms teams by and large have had a playbook for 40 years. You know what I mean? Where when let's take, for example, a company's reporting earnings. We know how to do that. They prepare the release, we have a press release. If it's a big deal, maybe they go on CNBC, and there's a series of steps, right? And I noticed last quarter that Satya Nadella from Microsoft published an earnings take on his own LinkedIn handle. And it was not, so it was not the press release. And it was an entirely newly written thing. Okay, so I'm like, oh my God, that's like more work for everybody, right? Because you still have to do the press release, but now you also have to write kind of in different styles for different media to reach people. And that's one of the things that has struck me. And I do think to some degree it's a new skill set and it's a new training. I kind of compare it to speech writing. Like it's a little bit of a niche within PR, you know what I mean? And I think so. One thing people have been struggling with is, okay, how much do I have to develop that skill set, and do we have to do it, and where are we going to do it, and sort of like but I think it's just beginning, because I think if Microsoft is doing it, you're going to just see many other companies follow suit gradually.
Well, I do want to bring us back on track to talk about metrics from PR. We've talked about a little bit about we've got a really interesting conversation about corporate communications and executive leadership, but I do want to keep us focused as our audience wants to learn and talk about metrics. And Ted and Trish, you've both implied to some degree or another that sort of traditional PR maybe kind of going the way of the dodo. And I want to get Amanda to react to that because we are an earned media agency. We don't provide, I mean, we have a digital marketing vendor that we use for very select circumstances. But outside of that, our bailiwick is media lists, pitching for interviews, writing op-eds, placing op-eds, and finding third-party voices to be media voices for our clients. And so I want to, Amanda, you've been around for 15 years, you said. How have you seen metrics change? We saw that the Marker Collective 2 years ago, finally, years too late, in my opinion, abandoned reach and impressions because did anybody still use those? And so I'd love to see how you've been able to adjust and what you did 10 years ago and how are you and your teams really looking at metrics today with the advent of the things that Trish and Ted have talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I came up, first 15 years ago, and it was very old school, coming in first thing in the morning as an intern, putting together all of the news. It was in a certain format. It was a specific deck that we filled out every single month and reported, things like that, impressions, engagements. And what I found more often than not is that the client was questioning it, not because they were questioning the results or the work, but they needed to then leave that room and take it to executives themselves. So if they don't understand what they're presenting, they can't possibly, also be evangelists for us inside the organization.
Right.
So I think it's that trust and just building out, almost treating the executives your client contact reports to as a separate audience. Just as it's important to, make sure a journalist understands what's the story here, your client needs to be able to articulate internally what your value is and how you're actually making their life easier as opposed to, they do media. Because that's not every organization's goal. Like sometimes it's, protection more than promotion, and they don't want to be in the media. And only by really, integrating with their team and getting to understand that can you make those goals happen. Like for one client, it might be they want 5 articles in a month. For another, they just want to lay low. And there's, to Trish's point, there's a lot of different facets of PR where I think we can pull those levers now.
Can you say, Amanda, what are the numbers people are really focused on now?
So and this is also hard to quantify, which is why I think, I don't think AI could ever really take a proper agency job. It's more, did our message get pulled through in what percentage of articles that we were in? Did this land somewhere? Like I've had clients who only care about one specific trade media publication. So it's, are we there? Our customers are reading this.
Right.
So like their customers aren't reading the Wall Street Journal. Maybe their CFO is, but if they want to reach customers and bring in business and have a real impact, they need to be going to those crunchy trade spaces.
And similarly to working with the marketing team, like we're not a marketing agency, but whenever we always tell our prospects, you either are going to use PR with us at least. PR is either going to be your air cover or it's going to be one of the many tools you have in your marketing and branding toolbox. And you need a whole robust marketing team because we had a client, we got them into Fox News Digital, Washington Examiner, Newsweek, Social Work Magazine, and we got them in so many outlets. I think they got 142 clicks to their website because they didn't have the business development. They had a 10-hour-a-week social media person going for a master's degree in social work. They didn't have that robust marketing team. They had no SEO. They could do nothing to pull through, to your point, Amanda, no matter where we got the placements. And so I do think a big part of PR metric is working with the marketing team, making sure that everyone is working together because maybe we get a better newsletter open rate because we led with Wall Street Journal in the headline, in the subject line, etc.
I think it helps set expectations too, just defining from the outset, this is marketing, this is PR, here's how we can help you. I think it just opens the conversation up more and lets them be more transparent, about their needs.
And from my perspective, from the in-house perspective, I think it's really important that when we're working with agencies that you are delivering the metrics in the language that we can use. You alluded to this, Amanda, right? In the language that we can use with the C-suite, right? That we can share broadly. And they only care about how are we driving, revenue influence and business momentum. And so help us to do that. And so your point too, Amanda, about, providing the guidance and the counsel and support, to get into the publications that are going to reach your audiences. So saying, we know that you now need to focus on this specific demographic or this specific audience. Here's where we're going to, focus from a media perspective. And then you can demonstrate that that's where you got, and the message, pull through as well. I think helping us in-house to not have to translate that, help translate it for us is very important.
Yeah.
Dustin, to be clear, I wasn't saying that media relations is going the way of dodo. It's a very critical part of the whole PR mix.
Well, I may have exaggerated slightly.
No. But I think it's a very critical part because of all of the reasons, because of the reach to the target audiences and the validation that provides. It's critical, and it's fueling the LLM. So let's be clear.
I just want to be on the if I can be on the record, I wasn't saying that either.
I know. I was teasing a bit, but I mean,
there was
research is showing that Ted, what you're doing is really important to the LLMs. Owned media is still, I believe, the dominant player in the LLMs.
But I think I just see them all together. First of all, I think getting in the legacy media, whether it's a trade journal or the journal or something. I read a stat recently from Muckrack. They said something like 94% of LLM citations were coming from earned media. So like you really have to be in that, so there's a sense that the kind of comms budget is moving from paid to earned, first of all. That's a big deal. And I do believe, the apex of this is being in the Times or the Journal or the FT or, whatever. There's a pillar at the top of your industry. And the validation, I look at it like that's the validation, because a limited number of companies and people can be mentioned. And so you're getting validated in a way, what I do where we put content out for people, it's not the same validation, it's not the same. So it is unquestionably in the hierarchy better to get cited and quoted. It's just, I think it's all, though, getting to the point where you can't guarantee that, and people need more coverage, and so they're like, what are my alternatives? And it's almost like another arrow in the quiver as opposed to a completely different thing.
Well, and that's where we loop back around to media relationships. I think to Trish's point, if they can quote 5 people, it's going to be the one that has been helping in the background without demanding too much.
So here's something that we really focused on at the company I was at most recently, and it really paid off in a lot of ways, in particular for media relations, but also just analyst coverage and really all the things, and resonating with our target audiences. It was the customer storytelling. So, it's going to be a lot, and you guys know this, but, just a reminder to us all that the customer stories, like who's actually using the products and benefiting from them and what are the outcomes they're achieving, are going to get a lot more media attention than our executives will, right? And sometimes executives don't like to hear that because they want, the president or the CEO, they want to be the one quoted. But if you can get the customer storytelling, into a cadence, it's going to really help drive a lot more of those, great coverage, the great coverage and the great, response from the target audiences.
Now, Amanda, one of the things that we're a generalist firm, like we talk on our prep call, you're one of the few PR generalists left.
Yeah, and I'm going the way of the dodo.
My background is politics and policy, but we've now worked in the last few years with AI, insurance. We're actually about to have another insurance client. We've worked with the sugar-free gum campaign, our first ever B2C campaign a couple years ago. Third-party authored op-eds about sugar-free gum. It was fascinating. We got everything from the National Catholic Register to Autism Magazine to USA Today. Like it was so much fun. But one of the things that, to your point, is dialing into those outlets, and I think that is part of the metric. Is if someone says we want the Wall Street Journal, okay, what is the Wall Street Journal? How likely are they to cover it? What is the language you need to get there versus where you actually need to be more your buyers in reading it? Getting USA Today is very different than The Hill in politics. Getting into Fox is going to be very different than getting into a trade mag in, construction, trade mag. And so I think part of the metrics of success is, did we land in the outlets that we, as the agency, told you are important? Here's why we made the case, and then we delivered. And then from there, was there
Mhm.
a pull through on social media, the newsletter, and those other on the marketing metrics? So, do you still see a lot of that We Want Wall Street Journal, or are you seeing the transition towards Substacks, toward LinkedIn, and toward other,
Mhm.
sort of niche or what's the term? Nano,
Mhm.
micro influencer type of attention for the PR side.
Honestly, a little bit of side A and a little bit of side B. There's still always going to be clients who want to be in the Wall Street Journal and, ones that should be. But I also think, I've seen a huge evolution in the way that clients react to, being told that something's not going to land or, having those conversations where expectations are set. I think they've become a lot more receptive to it. But, you know, just on the reporting and even planning front, I think it's come a really long way from trying to impress clients. And that's, I think, Dustin, to your point, where a lot of the jargon comes in and the charts that don't really make sense outside of the presentation room, and more to being a real partner to them and trying to integrate yourself with their team so that you can give them not only the results that they want or need, but the feedback that they want or need.
I think that's a really important point, and it kind of brings us back to the title of this. I think you have the word outcomes in there, Dustin, of this conversation. Um, Amanda, one of the things that I think and talk a lot about is, my expectation is that teams and our agency partners are going to be proactive, not just reactive. Obviously, you need to listen and be a good partner and be curious and all that. But I think being ahead of things for me, like giving me proactive ideas and insights and keeping your finger on the pulse of, oh, here comes one of the dogs, sorry. The keeping your finger on the pulse of the audiences and the market and the competition, and coming to me proactively with ideas, that's really where a lot of magic can happen.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I agree. I think those are the two most important things for anyone working client services, especially PR, to have, are the two things that AI will never ever have, which is accountability and proactivity. You can put any prompt in there and get it reflected back at you, but it's just
Right.
not the same.
So, folks, by the way, anyone who's watching, we're about halfway done here. I'd love for you to bring some questions. I know we have quite a few people watching. So, if you have any questions, if you're sort of a more junior person and you're not sure how to translate to C-suite because you've never had to do it before, feel free to ask that question. But we're also going to pivot now to training your team. And so, in my company, I was a one-person company, one and a quarter, for 2 years. We've grown. But we've gone from 4 people, five, depending how you count the numbers on the budget every month, to 11. We just hired 2 more part-time people. We've more than doubled the size of the company in the last year. And I've had to do a lot of training because now I'm taking a big step back and I'm relying on our account, or the people who are running our accounts to be able to translate to our clients very specific,
Mhm.
niche needs. Again, we're working most often with the agency directly, so it's a little bit easier for us. But at the same time, when we offer an idea, Trish, that they haven't thought of, I would need to be able to count on my client managers to be able to think through those ideas, check with me quickly, maybe get that feedback because I have that, long-standing experience in the company and in PR, but then be able to execute that
Yeah.
very quickly to get those ideas out the door. So, Ted, you were on the media side, you're a consultant, but you've also, I think in the information piece, you talked about having a team of I think, contractors that you work with. How do you ensure that your team is able to is trained to think through all the things we've been talking about related to proving value to clients? And then Amanda and Trish, likewise, please.
I got some kind of a big question, and I might just take a piece
Sorry.
of it, which is, I'll take a piece of it, okay, of the training.
Yep.
Again, so I'm kind of focused on what I'd call the new media or content creation on behalf of companies.
Hmm.
And I'm going to say that most companies and most of the comms people I talk to are not up to speed on the current practices. And I can give you a concrete example, which is most of the comms people I talk to still want to put hashtags on LinkedIn posts.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And so
It's 18 months out of date. Right.
it's 4 years out of date.
Really?
So
4 years?
it has not been in the algorithm for 4 years. So what I
Wow.
try to tell them is that, when you're now this is the interesting thing. they want to put hashtags on because they think the executives think there should be
Mhm.
hashtags on. It's
Right.
not always that they don't know. So we're in this kind of loop of like, okay, they need to be, in some cases, trained and learn that, and then in some cases they need to communicate that the style is evolving very rapidly. And we had kind of a media landscape, a PR landscape. I think that structurally didn't change for many years. And what I mean is the press release was written the way it was, you know. And so now we're seeing the vernacular evolving very quickly, whether it's hashtags or other things. And people are looking around like, what do I do? So I find a lot of the training that I'm doing with my own team and also with my clients to some degree is here's what we are seeing as the cutting edge, so that when
Mhm.
you look like you're hip, you know, basically you're in touch. And I'll give you another example. On LinkedIn, there's an about section, okay, to describe who you are, you know, and companies do it and people do it. And there's a split roughly 50-50 between third person and first person.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
what's the right answer?
Right.
Then you have that conversation. But so for me, the training has been a lot of bit of like, how do we stay on top of the current trends? And so my team is fully aware of what they need to deliver in a way that it's still that and these things are changing very quickly.
Mhm.
It sounds like Amanda hit some of the same things. It sounds like, but
No, I was just nodding in agreement. Yeah, I think also I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. I think a lot of it comes from just having to do it, just kind of an old school answer. But, especially like, when someone new joins the team or, you're bringing someone new in their career, they don't have that context to know, what ideas did we already try that didn't work? What have I learned from some of the failures on this front? So I think just that exposure and letting them be in the room when you're making these calls or letting them try out a first draft so that they can really work through it.
So the last agency that I was at, I was brought in to help elevate the strategic thinking and sophistication of the team and the function, so that we could serve our clients at higher levels, and expand our business. And one of the things that I did, aside from adding some new people to the team who were had experience leading strategy, was we did strategy training for our team. And it was a series. And one of the things that we really focused on was coaching them to ask questions that were business
Yes.
centered. And I think,
Mhm.
going back to the outcomes, right? A lot of, I think, a quick response that a lot of people have, a reflex that people have in PR and in communications, is to come up, brainstorm tactics, brainstorm, how do we do this? But I don't hear a lot of people still ask, what does the ultimate state look like? What is the desired state? What is the destination that we are
Right.
headed for? What does good look like? What are we all going to jump out of our seats for and get excited about when we've gotten there? And then you build the plan of how you're going to get there. But helping coaching, our teams, both internal and agency side, to ask questions about, what are you trying to achieve? What will good
Mhm.
look like? What
Yes.
does that look like in terms of numbers from the marketing perspective? Or how can we correlate this to revenue influence? Start to ask those questions. And I think that curiosity and that that just being inquisitive about it, and then layer on the questions, well, tell me more. What does that mean? Explain that to me. you know
Mhm.
Coaching them to do that, I think, is really critical, and it's going to help them, and it's going to help the clients, and it's going to help everybody, because then you're all aligned on what you're trying to accomplish and how you're going to get there.
And it makes everybody sound really smart. One of my sales mentors put a lot of time and effort, and it took me a long time to kind of figure out what he was trying to say. But there's a book by Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference.
Mhm.
I first read it as a sales assist book because my mentor recommended it. It's not. It's a phenomenal book on human interaction. I assume, Amanda, from your nodding, that you've read it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I read it at least once a year just to refresh myself. Because what I learned by reading this book was I just started asking people, well, what do you want to get for revenue next year? Oh, you said that. So the tactic you've really focused on is this. How does that make that happen? Oh, that's a great, and suddenly they think I'm a genius, and all I did was ask a natural follow-up question. And it earned trust that we weren't just a hack firm that was going to write a press release no matter what they said.
Exactly. And I think too, coaching our teams to be aware of not just what we're doing as a brand or business, but also what our competitors are doing and how the market's evolving, because there are a lot of markets that are experiencing a lot of volatility, right? And understanding kind of bigger, broader trends in the context that businesses are operating is key. I mean, the all of the things that are happening in the world around us, there are opportunities to counsel clients and to lead clients and have important conversations about what are the risks and opportunities for their business and brand. So I think that's something it's a reflex that we need to develop. I mean, I've said that we're at a really critical inflection point in communications, where with AI coming onto the scene and the ability for it to automate, perhaps not with the accuracy and productivity and authenticity that you talked about, Amanda, but it can drive some velocity and acceleration.
Oh, yeah.
So, our value really we need to step into this moment and step up and really be business fluent and understand our audiences better than anybody else.
Yep. I think that's such an important foundational step too, which is, in getting to where I think we need to be as communications practitioners in general, so that you need to approach it more like a doctor than a door-to-door salesperson. Because I still see so many people that,
Yes.
if a client makes a suggestion, it's yep, we'll do it, without furthering the conversation. Not that you should say no to clients, but why do you want to do that? What will that accomplish? You can't just walk into a doctor's office and say, like, I Googled it, here's what's wrong with me, let's go through this treatment. You have to, give them your history, let them hear you out, let them ask questions, and then make recommendations based on all the information.
How much would you say you push back like that in general? Like, is that in the industry, is that a normal standard or? Yeah.
30% of the time at least.
Okay.
I mean, maybe half the time. Because again, we're usually working with the agency directly. So the agency says, we want to target this state because this bill is out there. Okay, great. This is a small state. How many pieces do you want? You want that narrative from 6 voices. Is that going to become redundant? I'm echoing somewhere. Can everyone just go on mute for a second? I don't know who it is. It is Amanda. Okay. Thank you, Amanda. Not to call you out on my own show the first time we've met, but no,
that
so
makes sense.
we find that a lot, Ted, or a client will say, we want to go this narrative, and we'll say, all right, that narrative is so saturated. We either need to do a different narrative or a sub-narrative or wait 2 weeks until that narrative isn't as saturated. Man, I'm sure you have other examples.
Yeah, I was going to say too, it's really not pushback in a sense. It's more refinement, working with them to sculpt something, like the same way we wouldn't publish the first rough draft of any press release. I think we need to work with ideas the same way.
Brilliant. That's a great analogy. Oh my gosh, that's great.
Well, going back to the destination, like really clarifying that and say, let's look at that, and then let's together figure out what's the best way to get there. And Dustin, I know you do this all the time with your clients. I don't view that from the in-house perspective, because I've been on both sides. I don't view that as pushback. I view that as a valued partner. I mean, I think if I have an agency that's just showing up to the meetings and doing the pitching and kind of giving, they're not pushing me and challenging me and adding as much value as they possibly can. And I talk about it. It's not just about the meeting; it's about the mandate. So I expect that. And the agency that I was at most recently, I love how they loved improv, and they actually had workshops, like comedy improv workshops, as a part of their mix. And I just love that. And they coached me to, instead of saying, no, we're going to do it this way, or no, what about, they said, yes, and.
Right. Yes.
And what if we looked at this? Yes. And what do you know about that audience? And I've been using that ever since. I love it.
That's really.
There's a question in the Chris Voss book about how will that accomplish? That's not the perfect language, Amanda. You'll have to Google it and find it for me. But it's how will we get across the finish line? Basically, putting it on the other person if they have a bad idea, instead of saying no. Oh, okay. How will this achieve the goal? And when they say, "Oh, I'm not sure," well, you know, it's a good idea, but what if we refined it, to use Amanda's term, this way? And I think that's how we do a lot of our pushback is this is not what we recommend, and here's why, but going along with we're all aiming toward that same outcome.
I expect that from my agency partners. I want that and I expect that. Yeah.
So we got about 16 minutes left. People would love to hear some questions. In the meantime, Ted, I do want to get you sort of re-engaged a little bit here because I think one thing we haven't talked about, and I think it's super important. In fact, Trish, I think you're working on a comment for me for a piece related to this topic, which is beyond the headlines. You can't just have the headline, get the press and say, hey, we did our job. If it's not the right press with the right audience, of course, we all know that as PR professionals. But also, I think it's really important to show the sausage making. I think it's really important to show we are not just because Ted, you know, the metric is where the work we're putting in, but it's to show we are going to go through this process, and this is a process to which you can hold us accountable. You know, and with what you're doing, as you said, every week you can prove something happened. It's there. How much do you find that the sausage making, you tell somebody, we're going to put you up on LinkedIn, and that's going to lead to a Bloomberg hit or a trade mag hit in 6 to 12 months? How important is the sausage making to show somebody that they can trust you?
Well, I'll give you a sort of this might be a non-orthodox take.
Oh, good.
But so like I don't promise that the ROI.
Oh, okay.
I do not, and I'll tell you one because I think you can't. I think like I mean yeah, you could say that, and then you're going to explain why it didn't happen or something. But I think I'm going to just give you my experience is that the only metric that in the work I do in the work I do, the only metric that matters is that if the CEO writes something, somebody that the CEO cares about mentions it to him or her.
Oh,
That is, I swear to God, that's the only metric. And you can talk about till the cows come home about this impressions and that impressions and this and that. They don't care. They want to go to a cocktail party or a conference or a business event or the club, and they want somebody to say, I saw that thing you wrote, and it was really interesting. And that's it. I swear to God, that's it. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's what it is. And so I sort of say that's what I promised them. I said we're going to write something that people are they're going to come up to you and they're going to comment on it. And if I don't deliver that, then it doesn't work. But
I think I love that because I talk a lot about reach is important, but resonance is more important. That's an example of resonance,
yeah.
right?
yeah, because it's firsthand. I'll say one other thing, just again unorthodox. So in the old days, if you get in the New York Times, we know what the circulation is. So we know what we can tell the CEO you're in front of 3 million people or whatever. The digital world is really squirrely, honestly.
Yes.
And like I'm just telling you, my experience has been like the comms people will tweak the numbers with promoting or buying this or that, and the executives don't understand how any of that works. And so you can go in with any number you want about engagement. You just spend more. And that's because there's, I think, a generational digital divide there that's going to go away, because younger people, as they come up in leadership ranks, understand. But anyway, I think so. That's why I go back to like, it has to have a personal impact. The numbers are like, yeah, you told me the numbers. Okay. They'll sign the check, but ultimately it's like, did it hit them?
And Amanda, I'd like you to dial in on that because what part of our sausage making is we are going to, in the case of a third party author, we're going to talk with you. We're going to dial in the narrative that we all agree on that reaches the target audience. Then we're going to find 5 digital authors, run them by you. You approve. Then we're going to interview the author. There's a whole number of steps there, or we're going to, you want to get this outcome. Well, these are the media outlets we're going to target. These are the people at those outlets. This is the pitch that we're going to, customize to each one of them. And we're going to work with the marketing team afterwards to make sure that any media coverage is repurposed through these platforms and then such and such and such. And I find that earns a lot of trust and that can't be faked. And you haven't even achieved a metric yet. You already earned a significant amount of trust.
Yeah. And I think and I'm partially joking on this, but I think there's something to be said, not just for showing off the results, but going through the whole sausage process, because you're showing, yes, what goes into getting that final outcome, but you're also telling your client exactly how many things a day they don't want to do that you're taking care of for them.
Ooh, ooh,
Like, I think they think it's
yes,
sometimes they think it's easy, email a journalist, get the coverage.
right.
They're not going through all of the steps and building the media list and vetting the audiences of the publications. I think just it's a way to demonstrate impactfully how you're actually making their day easier.
As long as it doesn't come across as, and I know you don't do this, but I have heard it before in the past where it becomes defensive. Like, well, we didn't do it because
Yeah.
we did all these things.
Yeah,
We reached out to this many
right.
people. We did all these pitches and still nothing. I want to hear then what's the solution? Like,
Yeah.
how are we going to get there?
And that
But
actually leads us.
from my perspective, in house, and maybe I am biased. I'm heavily biased because I've worked on the agency side too. I like to see the sausage making because to me that's an opportunity for collaboration and explanation. Like, give me the rationale for this, and maybe I've got an idea that might help you because I'm inside. I might be able to help you beef up the pitch a little bit or give you something, data specific that might help you to help us. To quote Jerry Maguire.
And I think it is just finding that line and threading the needle between proactive and defensive. So I think, if you're being defensive with a client, either there's something going on there or they're being defensive against something else internally. So if you don't have that trust to work together, you're not going to be able to figure out what they're up against internally, and you're not going to be able to help.
I think that's a really good point. It ties back to something Trish and Amanda talked about 42 minutes ago, which was that secondary audience, right? Because someone who was on the show previously, Sarah Evans, who's done so much with AI and PR, she actually gave me an example of a report for a piece I was writing on how they not only did they have the report for the C-suite, but they had a report customized to the marketing person who was their point of contact, so then they can translate it up. They really worked hard at making sure that everybody was on the same page. And I think too that we do reports 5 to 7 days after publication, and it's based on sampling of social media, AI generated estimates of likely readership, usually a pretty big range, 10,000 to 50,000 or something. So we're not overstating. Things like this. We also look at republishings, downstream coverage, and backlinks at relevant outlets, etc. And I think that just you don't want to show too much, right? Because if you show a bunch of irrelevant screenshots, that's not a metric of success. That's just stuff. And so I do think a part of the training, and again, this was all in my head. In the last year, my team has had to pull so much out of my head and actually put it on paper because we're still a small agency. I didn't know we needed like 17 processes for all these different training components. And so it's actually been highly educational for me as we've gone from having me be the main client manager to having 3 client managers, none of them being me, what they need to know from me and what processes we need to build versus those things that are more organic or instinctive. As they are trained, then they can pick up the ball and run with it on a question I've never been asked.
Curious, Dustin, what do you think if you said the top 3 uses of AI that firms are using now? Like, what are they using AI for?
Trish can answer that question, and I can't speak to Amanda's AI background. I will say that for initial research, it's extraordinarily helpful.
Yep.
It's really helpful if you know how to use it to do either one or the other of you do the first draft. Like I can put a first draft together in about 15 minutes, like 300 words, and then say, expand that with these other resources.
Yeah.
Or verse contra, just go, hey, I want this thing in this voice with these resources. It's really good at an initial content idea generation, initial research, and then those are really the 2 biggest ways we use it. But also it's helpful for us on our marketing side. Like I take this show, our operations person takes it, cuts the clips from it, and uploads this whole video, which will be an hour long, into Descript in about a minute. And then can do all those things. So it's actually very helpful for us for our marketing. But in terms of client services, research, and then initial drafting. Amanda, and then of course, Trish, I'd love for you to talk about at scale.
Yeah, I refer to ChatGPT as my greenest intern. So I think it hits all those buttons. It's very eager, it's great at research, and it does a great first draft, but I'm not sending that draft anywhere without fact checking it completely and putting it in my own words. It's just it makes the day easier, but it also doesn't have that nuance and doesn't have that accountability. Like I mentioned earlier, you can't send something to a client if they find a mistake in it. You can't say, oh, ChatGPT messed that up. The same way you're not going to be like, oh, our intern messed that up. You still sent it.
Right.
I completely agree with that, Amanda. I get in arguments with my AI tools. Like, I've already told you this. Don't do this again. So
Right.
you have to provide that human oversight. But I think from uh, everything that you all said, plus you can use. I mean, I'm looking at AI as always on. Right? It's to me not only the intern to help with the kind of tedious and repetitive tasks, but also a thought partner.
Right.
And so I
Oh,
use it
that's a
a
good
lot for
point.
pressure testing, for
Mhm.
messages, for content that I've written. It's able to do at a very fast pace, do a very broad scan of all different types of sources that would take me days or weeks to do on my own. And so I'm using it a lot as a thought partner. And I think one of the things maybe that Dustin you're referring to is on the corporate side and probably on the agency side too, we really need to be AI visionaries and not victims, because a lot of those tactical things like content development, even though we need the human oversight, AI is stepping in and doing a lot more of that. And so to lead through this moment, we really need to be smart about how do we use AI to automate those tedious, repetitive tasks and redeploy and train and develop our teams and our
Yeah.
functions to deliver all of that incredible human context and oversight and leadership that we still need very, very much. And the strategy, right? So I've been talking a lot about, like, we need to be thinking about developing hybrid teams. I've already got workflows
Yeah.
automated with AI that are helping me on a weekly, like, deliver this to my inbox. I want this
Mhm.
PDF of all of the updated, media on this topic delivered to me at Fridays at 2 p.m. And it happens. So we've just got to get really smart and lead through this moment.
So one of my old mentors, Ariel Kavaris, she's with Sloan and Company, used to have something on the sign of her office saying, AI will not replace humans. Humans who use AI will replace humans who don't.
I had an op-ed. AI won't replace PR or won't kill PR. Lazy leaders might.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, well, apparently PR Week did too. Um, but I want to close on this other topic that just occurred to me. I keep hearing about this concern that media outlets have about did you use AI or clients. I've heard from other agency folks and consultants the concern from their clients, well, AI, did you use AI to make this content? We've never been asked. And I've now publicly spoken probably what, Trish, I did a show with you, show with Sam independently. I've written about how we use AI in our team. I wonder, and I want to close on this, as part of our outcomes to clients is showing our brains. We've talked about this all, but I want to kind of tee on this with related to AI is AI can produce a draft and it's going to look like every other person who's putting out really bad content. I'm actually putting together a draft of an op-ed. It's not really too much down yet on why I'm embracing the era of AI slop. Because if you have a better brain, you ask better questions, you're dialing into your client's pain points, and then you produce the content, whether it's a pitch or whether it's an op-ed or LinkedIn content, that is better. They will stand out in the era of AI slop. So I want to just end here with a little round robin on how do you take advantage of the AI era to drive home outcomes? And one of ours is we use AI because we're going to produce the best content and it's going to land.
It's for me, it's just about that pressure testing and that thought partnership, as well as the tactical, kind of task workflows. I think we have to remember too that, I don't know what word I should use. There's probably a profanity, but like slop in, slop out. If
Oh,
we're
sorry.
whatever the
I was
right
about to say that, Trish.
poo-poo in, poo-poo out, whatever. There are better words for that, but we need to be really mindful of that. And so that's where a big part of the human, managing AI as a thought partner or an intern, right, Amanda? Is we have to proactively and actively manage it. What are the prompts we're putting in? How are we guiding it? How are we training it? And then making sure we always have that human oversight at the end. It's really critical.
No, I agree with that. I think, custom instructions, maybe even creating projects like for a specific client account, just so that the wording is in there. Because I know AI loves to just run things through the thesaurus and say that it's been changed. But I think it is a lot about prompt writing and making it really clear what you want and why you want it. Just like giving feedback to a person, like, if an intern came to me and asked for feedback on a byline that they ghost wrote, I can't just be like, no, make it firmer. Like you have to
Yes,
give
I tried
actual
that
feedback.
when we first started using AI, and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
Yes.
You
Yep.
said you
It's
tried to
like
make it
Amelia
harder, or make
Bedelia.
it.
You're going to get what you're asking for. So I think we need to learn how
Well,
to
I was saying
ask.
things like, this needs to be less vague. But now that's such a vague instruction, I couldn't even work with it at all. So the person we hired actually said, no, Dustin, this paragraph needs to be this way. Here's an example. Like, give that very specific feedback to me. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Amanda, but I identify with that mistake.
But this is a big part of, like, as we're hiring and building and developing our teams and ourselves as
True.
agency and function
Mhm.
leaders, is that we need to be really good at managing AI and hybrid teams, like where we're managing not just people, but we're managing the tools.
I could see that even becoming part of the interview process. I've taken skill tests. You have 1 hour, write a press release, send it in.
Oh,
I
sure.
think it'll be like, show us what you can do with AI. Send us the prompts that you used and the final output. I think instead of being afraid of it, we have to start testing for that literacy.
And there are questions now in applications that ask that. How are you using AI, and give us examples?
Oh, are they asking you that as like if you're pitching for business, or what's the context?
In job applications.
Oh, in job applications. Okay.
Yeah, because I think there are a number of, and it might be specific industries, but something that's important to me as a leader is knowing that people who are coming onto the team are open to it and are curious about it and are willing to be a part of a hybrid
Mhm.
team, because we don't want to replace people. We want to focus the human energy and abilities on things that that we're really, really good at and that we need more
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I guess I would just say I'd look at it as I'd look at the end result. The content that you produce is either good or bad,
Sure.
objectively. And I would say, like, it probably doesn't matter how you get there, because we're going to get to the point relatively soon where the content's good or it's bad. And honestly, whether it's human written or AI written, it can be bad, and the majority is bad.
Well,
So,
yes.
so there you go. Like, that I think we're in this point right now where everybody's focused on, is it AI written? But
Right.
we're going to get past that pretty soon, where people are like, okay, everybody's going to incorporate AI into workflow. What are they doing with that? And if you look at like online writing, the majority is problematic at this moment. So it'll start to be judged on, okay, did you use the tool in a way that has a high quality result or not? I also would just say one last thing is that, I don't know, it's this human thing, but the vast majority of people seem to think other people can't tell.
Oh my gosh, it's so
And that's
obvious.
wild. And it's, if you're chronically online, you can tell. And so I don't know what to say about that, but people think that you don't know.
Justice for the M dash, because I've been overusing M dashes my entire life. The only
Yes.
reason AI uses it is because we trained it on writing that uses it. But it
Yeah.
drives me crazy when I see online, they're like, there's an M dash, this is fake. Like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
My favorite part of writing is you can tell if someone's using AI because it says this thing versus that thing with three short sentences right after.
Yeah.
And
There's all these
it reminds me when I started off in my
dollar signs,
writing,
right? Sure.
right,
Yeah.
right, 15 years ago, 18 years ago, and I thought I wrote this great argument. Someone was like, Dustin, you were so on the nose, like it didn't even resonate at all. Like there was no guidance. It was just slamming me in the face. You told me, you didn't show me. And AI just seems to love this idea of creating fake tension. That is just atrocious.
Yeah.
So we'll end on that note because I unfortunately have to jump. My wife dropped off some pizza for me. I mean, at our highly produced office at Proven Media Solutions. And so, folks, this was great. I do want to make sure I thank Amanda and Trish. I had a couple of guests drop off. So Amanda, Shannon, thank you for making sure Amanda and I met and she got on the show. And not met Amanda till today. She hadn't heard of me, I don't think, till last week. So thank you. And then Trish, you jumped in because Tracy ran out of power from some storms. And Ted, of course, got another half a dozen emails he didn't expect while I was trying to figure out who was actually going to be on the show. So
Yeah.
This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate everybody, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Fantastic.
Bye.